There was an old battalion or regimental commander. I forget. I saw him on YouTube talking about what people don't realize about the Rangers, and it really struck me as being pretty profound. But he said what people don't understand when you're in the Ranger Regiment is the missions that your government is going to send you on are really suicide missions. They No one else can do it. It's got to get done, and they fully understand none of you may come back, but we're going to put you in because you're the best we've got, and it's got to happen. And something else that people don't understand is that Ranger Creed. And when I was in Afghanistan as a security contractor, I'd see the boys getting kitted up and getting ready to go out on operations at night. And they all get in a circle. They all put their arms around one another in that circle, and they recite the Ranger Creed. And that's not just words on a page. Everything in there the guys live by, and it gets hammered into you, right down to the never shall I leave a fallen comrade to
Yeah.
fall into the hands of the enemy. And you remember Haditha Dam in Iraq,
Yep.
where there's one guy that was left behind. And after they got pushed off, they got reorganized and commandeered some armor and went back
Went
in
back. Yeah.
and got him. And the first words out of his mouth were, I knew you would come back. And that's why the guys go out, because they know you're not going to get left behind.
You're
They're
not
going
gonna
to
get
come after you.
not.
There's another thing an old regimental sergeant major said at a formation I heard one time that struck home is that when Delta gets in trouble, they call Rangers. When the SEALs get in trouble, they call the Rangers. When Rangers get in trouble, they call more
They
Rangers.
call more range. I've heard that before too.
From Kansas City to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto,
Switch is on, motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
The Switch is on, Battle Line Podcast. Christopher Brewer coming on with us this episode, retired Special Forces officer, Army Ranger with 38 years of combined service, and yeah, as old school of a Ranger as it gets. Before we even get into that interview, we got a couple of things to hit. First and foremost, man, it's crazy because when I was prepping the show, and by the way, guys, we're recording on Thursday, so I know this is old news by now. There's gonna be someone in the comments being like, "This is old news," but rest in peace to the legendary Ozzy Osbourne, of course, and rest in peace to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
We're losing icons of the '80s.
Oh, we get older. I guess we just forget that we don't. We still age, and people, people are we're going to pass, and it like we talked last week about people dying that we grew up with, that we were raised on.
Although I remember not dying, hopefully, with
No,
that one.
but the it's like part of your childhood, I guess. I never really understood it. My parents used to say that a little bit, or they get upset when some of the icon that they grew up with passed away, or and as a kid, you don't get it. You're like, what? You carry? I don't know. But you really do. It's not even the person and God bless you. I don't know Hulk. I don't know Hulk Hogan or Ozzy Osbourne. Bless their families, of course, and but I never knew them, and so you feel like, well, why should you care? Who gives it? And it's not that them. It's that you remember things that when you heard, Mama, I'm coming home. So I used to listen to that every time when I left Afghanistan. That was on my home playlist. Flying Back
It's a great
Home,
song.
that was
That whole
one.
album is
That was,
tremendous.
yeah, that was. And then Motley Crue, is it
Home Sweet Home.
Home
Yeah.
Sweet Home was another one. And
The
then
better one is the 1991 version, I will
yeah,
say, guys. It's funny. They have the original version from, I think, 1984 or 86, where if you read the dirt, they talk about we wanted to have like a grand piano, and the producer just had one of these little, like, small pianos. It was like, oh, just play it on that. And they're like, we never got the vision we wanted. So if you listen to the 91, you can
yeah.
hear it's like the grand piano, way more of an epic song. But yeah, great,
It
great song.
is, and and then even Blake Shelton, Home, and Michael Bublé, even he did that version of it, it's just so when they do pass, like it's just first thing I remember was getting on that damn secret CIA J-Lo bird and putting my headphones in and flying home, and so it does. It's like a piece of you is not gone, but kind of is. It'll always be there, but it's like damn. Yeah, like Hulk Hogan growing up and watching on a black and white
Oh yeah.
TV as a kid, watching wrestling, staying up too late, sneaking down to watch TV. And
I'll tell you something. There's a
it,
picture of me. I don't know if I'll be able to put it on screen or anything. Maybe. I think it's at my parents' house. But I grew up in the town next to Port Washington. I am now in Port Washington. I think I've showed you. We have an absolutely
yeah, yeah,
beautiful dock here. It's one of the
yeah.
coolest things about living here. There's a picture of my dad holding me at the dock, and I got a Hulk Hogan figure in my hand. So, I mean, that tells you I grew up
It tells you.
with the Hulkster.
Well, that was those were the glory days, man. Macho Man Hulk and Macho Man Savage going at it, and that was the
Ultimate
big
Warrior.
Ultimate War. Yeah, those days were. I mean, it just was fun. It was the '90s, and that was the '80s, and yeah,
Both, yeah.
it
Mid
was.
80s to mid 90s,
And the
really.
'90s was fun and crazy, and that was MTV and wrestling. That was that was, so it is. It's like a childhood kind of. It's not gone, but it kind of disappeared, the luster a little bit. And then you're like me, you realize that shit, man, I am getting older. So it's a reminder to yourselves. But anyway, they were icons, and I'm not necessarily. I'm not just what's the word I'm looking for?
I have no idea.
I'm not putting them up on a pedestal per se
Yeah.
because again they're people fallible, of course.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's the things that we grew up with when they were that we grew up and they were part of our culture, and it's part, and they're gone. But the blessing is their music and WWE reruns and documentaries on Hulk Hogan will be f forever. And I understand that too. And it's one of the reasons why we did 13 hours and why we got talked into doing it by producers is like, hey, you do this, this will be here forever, even when you're gone. And so there is a silver lining. But yeah, it was kind of sad. I'm the same way as you when you hit that. That's kind of sad. Yeah, it is. It is, man. A piece of us is
The
kind of gone.
the crazy thing with the Ozzy one, I have to say though, man, is the timing. The timing is just insane. The fact that 2 weeks ago in the UK, Ozzy does his last ever concert. It is a huge, huge send off with Metallica, with Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, with Tool. Tom Morello organized it. Just anyone who is anyone in rock or metal was at that concert. He was in his wheelchair, or in his chair doing two or three songs. He knew his time was about to come. Sid Wilson of Slipknot proposes to his daughter, Kelly, in front of him, gets his blessing and all that. And, people are like, oh, is this really the last time Ozzy ever plays? And 2 weeks later, he dies.
Dude,
And I almost feel like in his mind, it was like, I did it all. We knew his time was going to come with his battle with Parkinson's, but I almost feel like he hung in there for this major, major event that people flew all the way from here to England from all over the world. And I mean, what a life, man. The guy did it all.
man, yeah, and shouldn't have lived this long with
Yeah.
with all the
Yeah.
damn substances. So yeah, man was truly truly blessed, and I think I don't know what you think, but I want to ask you your opinion on it. I do think that when we get to certain ages, and seeing my father the same way where he passed, I think there's a time where you can fight everything to hold on, and then you just can finally let go, and
I think so. I mean,
and
because he
that's
hung
it.
on for that
Yeah.
concert literally 2 weeks ago, July 5th. He hung on for this major, major event, had a big smile on his face, performing for everybody. And that was it. And also the big thing with that, for people who don't know, I'm sure a lot of you guys do know who are big rock fans and metal fans, but Black Sabbath did do one final tour for the album
Yeah.
13, which I was at, and Bill Ward was not on drums. And Ozzy said it was a huge regret of his that he never got to play again with Bill Ward. And Bill Ward got up on stage with him for this last concert, did some songs, took his shirt off. Tony Iommi busted his balls and said, "You look ridiculous with your shirt off." And he was basically like, "I don't care. I'm going to drum up here with my shirt off." And yeah, I mean, he got everything he wanted, man. He wanted to perform with the original lineup of Sabbath one final time, and he did it. And he also, the crazy thing is when I talk about the timing, he also made amends with members of Ozzy that he was on very bad terms with, who were invited to perform with him one last time, and he kind of reconciled with all these people he had bad blood with. So I
Well,
mean, that's the way to go out.
no, you always you have your brothers and you love them and you reconcile and I know how that feels. I'm glad that the whole team, all of us, have reconciled. It's something that sticks with you when you haven't for years because you go through it's like when me and Oz and Boone and everybody didn't get along for a time and you say it doesn't bother me, but it is in the back of your mind. And then when you finally reconcile, it's like a weight's lifted, Audie. And I'm sure it's the same with that's how he felt. It's like a weight he made the attempt to reach out and he
And it's like
reconciled with
almost how he was able to just go out. He was able to be like, okay, I'm on good terms with everybody.
well, isn't that how you want to go out? You want to if you're
Yeah.
gonna go out, like you want to be no regrets, everything's good. I did everything I could. I've accomplished everything in my life that I wanted to accomplish. It's my terms. If I want to go out, I want to go out on my terms. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that's what you want to do. And man, again, that man is truly blessed to go through everything that he went through, to be the sinner that he was, and then to even go out how he did, and still be one of the most respected persons in. And you follow rock more, not you,
Oh,
in
of
the
course. I mean, he's
industry,
an icon.
in the industry, and then also come to terms and have peace with everybody that you had bad blood with. Man, God loves sinners, bro. That's all I gotta say. And but it's cool. I think that's really awesome, and
Yeah, I
it
do
gives
too.
hope
And
for everybody.
I saw a lot of people posting about it in the metal world that were like, "This is a horrible day. This sucks. Part of me has died." I don't really feel that
Yeah,
way. I mean, because of the fact that, as you said, I think people expected Ozzy to die in the
yeah,
80s, truthfully.
yeah.
And I saw like Mark Slaughter post that, Mark was on the No More Tours tour. That was back in the early 90s when he said no more tours. Like everybody thought it was over and all these decades later. And to me, I actually said this on my other channel, Ian Scotto Rocks, because I did a video about it just recently, just to make a comparison here, but just recently, the lead singer of the band Dropout Kings committed suicide,
Yeah.
who is younger than me. And to me, that is tragic.
No,
That's
yeah.
way like a guy dying in his 70s who did all that. But to me, a guy who felt his life was so unbearable that he decided to take his own life. And truthfully, when I reported it on my channel, I purposely did not monetize that video. And I said, I want to do this as tastefully as possible. And I felt very different about doing the Ozzy video. Because to me, it's like we celebrate his life. But like with that, I was like, man, I don't want to offend anybody because it's such a hard thing. And the thing that actually meant a lot to me was on the comments on that video. Adam Ramey's mom commented and said, "Hey, I really appreciate you doing this in a tasteful way. My life will never be the same." And like to me, that's tragic, man. A guy
That
in his
is.
70s going out on his own terms, that's not tragic. That's amazing.
Yeah,
So there's a big difference.
there is. It's sad, but it's that sadness that kind of brings a smile on your like man, it brings a smile on my face. Not
Yeah.
that, but it's like man, I remember listening to Ozzy and coming home after a hell of a deployment. I remember just listening to him in the car in high school. Maybe we're drinking out by the tree. Who knows? But it just you remember good things when somebody and you're right, when somebody commits suicide, any good memories that you had, they're tainted, man. They
Yeah.
are.
Or when someone's time just comes way too young.
You're
When they're
young. You're
younger
right.
than
Yeah.
me is when it really hits me.
I know. I agree with in this case. This. So I said this guy's truly blessed. He was truly blessed because he shouldn't have lived this long, and he did. And it sounds like to me he reconciled all his demons
Yeah.
which for if anybody you can get this is just it's hope. You have hope. Everybody should have hope for themselves. Even if you're doing wrong, you can fix yourself and you can still live a wonderful, wonderful life and make it to your 70s and have peace. And I guess that's the word I'm looking for. It's like he had peace. When he went,
Yeah.
he had peace. This is I did it on my terms. Committing suicide is not on your terms. That's the devil's terms. That's the demon. That's not your terms. Your turn. This is your terms. At peace with everything, reconcile with everybody. I've been holding on, trying to get as much done as I can. All right, I'm good. I can let go finally and just. And I really do think, I really wish I would have been there for my father, but he held on for a long time to get things right, and then I think I do. I honestly think he just it's like I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
good, and not giving up. It's just it's time to let go.
Yeah, I
And
get it when you say that, and I mean it's interesting because you've been with me doing this show now for 6 years, and there have been multiple times I've been like, you know what, I'm getting out of New York, I'm
yeah,
going to move to Florida, and I ended up not doing it, and really that's the reason why. My dad is here, my mom is here,
well, you
and I
got things
would,
to do. You got
but
things
I
you still
wouldn't
want
want
to do.
to have that of, oh, I wasn't there when that happens. My
It,
dad is right down the street. If anything's going on wrong with me, anything going on wrong with him,
yeah,
I'm right there. So that's important to me. Family is everything,
yeah.
man. The other thing I want to talk about before we get to the interview, and this is completely in your wheelhouse. This just broke before we recorded like the day before. Once again, we record a few days prior, but Scott Whitner, who I worked with when I was at Hurricane Group, which had that website, The Loadout
Hmm.
Room. Scott is a guy who really knows guns, so I trust him on the stuff he reports on. This is from The Truth About Guns, and it's Air Force pauses use of M18 pistols after fatal discharge at F.E. Warren Air Force Base. And I'm just going to read the whole thing. It's not too
Yeah, go
long.
ahead. Yeah.
Um, a tragic incident at F.E. Warren Air Force Base has prompted the U.S. Air Force Global Strike Command, AFGSC, to suspend the use of all SIG Sauer M18 pistols. The decision follows the death of a security forces desk sergeant, reportedly killed by an unintentional discharge while the weapon remained secured inside a Safariland holster. According to a widely shared memo dated July 22nd, 2025, and confirmed by multiple media outlets, including the War Zone and Soldier of Fortune magazine, the commanding general of AFGSC issued a force-wide directive to cease all use of M18 sidearm pending the outcome of an investigation. Then he writes here what happened. Social media posts and early reports suggest that the incident occurred when the sergeant removed his holstered M18 from his duty belt using the Safariland QLS fork system. While the pistol remained holstered and untouched, it allegedly discharged on the table, striking the airman in the chest and fatally wounding him. This highly unusual event, where a firearm discharged from within a holster with no physical manipulation of the trigger, has raised serious concerns both within the military circles and among civilian firearm experts. Then it goes into fallout and immediate action. In response, the Air Force Global Strike Command, which oversees some of the nation's most sensitive strategic assets, issued a pause on the use of M18 pistols across the command. AFGSC personnel have been ordered to stop carrying or handling the weapon until a root cause analysis can be completed. The Air Force has not yet released an official incident report, and details surrounding the cause of the discharge, whether mechanical failure, holster incompatibility, or other factors, remain unconfirmed. Yeah, then he goes into social media skepticism. I don't have to get into all that, but man, for
Yeah.
one, what a tragic event. And I mean, as he says here, what a unusual event.
Well, I don't know if it's very much unusual. I was talking to you about when you said this. I've said well, the M18 is a variant of the what's called the P320, and the P320 has had some negligent discharges within law enforcement and the Army over the years. Now you can research them, do your due diligence, guys. Oh, tunnels are like, no, look out there. There have been some, and even my buddy Eddie Ranji, he 5 6 years ago, we used his range sometimes. Battle line trains at his range down there at outside of Tulsa and Kiefer. His sig even they did a negligent. I should say it was an accidental discharge. Why in the holster? That so. Now SIG has gone to bat and SIG has gone through multiple investigations because the P320 had negligent or accidental, not negligent. Negligent means the person did it. There was negligence by the handler.
Yeah, I mean, if this was on the
Yeah.
desk.
This was an accidental discharge, but it would still
But
be
wouldn't you
negligent.
say that's very
All. No,
unusual?
what I'm getting at is there's something wrong with the P320. There's something wrong with either the SIG trigger, whether it's too light, too sensitive, whether the drop safety in there is not functioning correctly, or some interior mechanism that's setting it off, or maybe it's not compatible with a Safariland holster. That might be it too. Regardless, though, that shouldn't happen. You don't hear that a lot with staccatos or Glocks or MMPs, or you don't. You're hearing it with SIG. And when there's smoke, there's fire, guys. We told last show. You were asking me about that SIG with Sean on the last show.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's one of the reasons I don't like SIGs. I have a little 365 that I wear with some of my stuff, and that one has no issues. It's got a heavy trigger on it. And what I'm talking about for those that don't shoot, their triggers, lightness and heavy means how hard is it to pull that
Sure,
trigger to
sure.
get to
No, I
go off.
remember when we had Christopher, I don't remember his name, but from the police, from the NYPD. Remember he talked
Yeah,
about
yeah.
how they were making the triggers so heavy
Well, that
that
was
there
too
were,
heavy. So they,
yeah,
yes, so the yeah, and there has to be a happy medium, and whatever's going on, the investigations have been done. SIG has not been come to fault, and SIG has defended that they meet all safety standards. But what are you going to say? No, we don't. I mean, come on. Um,
but they've
what I,
admitted to this hapappening.
well,
I believe they
they
put out some
don't
statement. Yeah,
they don't have a choice. I mean, how are you not going to admit it?
yeah,
Especially when it's a military contract. So they're giving, they won the contracts. They won some of the contracts to replace the M4. They've won the contracts to replace the M249, to replace the SAW and the Mark 46. So they're winning all these government contracts, and a lot of times too, if companies, sometimes the quality control goes out the window. I'm not saying SIG it is. I guess I haven't been to their manufacturing plant in years, since they were very small before they've obviously now they're monstrous. But there's something going wrong mechanically, or it doesn't work with certain holsters that's causing it to go off. And regardless, that's unsat. There needs to be something done about it. And all you can do now is just go through, and it's just painstaking. An outsider, my opinion, an outsider needs to go in, a third party, like you when you do an oversight committee, like in the government, something that's completely opposite, completely autonomous of what you're investigating. They need to go in there and do multiple tests again. But that's the thing is, before you get these contracts with the government, brother, whether it be Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, DOD, anybody, see, there is a huge screening process. So a lot of these tests should have been done. But that being said, it still comes down to this and the lowest bidder, and or where we're going to make the most money, or the costs. And I wasn't part of that. I'm just saying that's part of it. So your brain can go to those areas. Well, are they doing all the necessary quality control and tests to ensure that these things are safe under all circumstances, or are they just kind of pencil drilling some of them because SIG's giving us the best deal? I don't know. I don't know, but it seems kind of odd that this has happened. And when it happens, it's always a SIG, and it's always a version. It's either the P320 or the version of it, which is what an M18 is. It's a version of a P320. I always say when there's smoke, there's fire, man. And I think there's some responsibility. It's got to be with SIG, and it's got to be with SIG. And so yeah, that's terrible. And hate me if SIG guys, hate me if you want. SIG, you can hate me if you want to, but
how can you?
it is what it is. It's
Yeah,
just the facts. I'm just the facts. I am
no.
giving my opinion based off the facts, but again, that's just my opinion, and take it for what it's worth or don't. No big deal.
What you're saying makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I have a few thoughts on this. I'll tell you one thing I was thinking of. Every time there's a mass shooting event, right? Tragedy like that. Typically, right, the anti-gun people go out there and they say we should be able to sue the manufacturer, which I think is completely ridiculous. However, in
This,
an incident like
yeah,
this, I think they have
yeah.
every right to sue SIG.
They do SIG, or if they find in it's Safari Land, and then Safari Land better be doing their own investigations to make sure they're not culpable as well. And then also, I mean, there's multiple people you can sue the Air Force as well because it's their contract.
And it's not, and
Regardless,
when we say you can sue, it's like I'm not a litigious guy
No,
who
you're
thinks
not at
go around
all.
suing
No,
everybody. But like in this case, man, if I lost a family member due to
just
something that was no fault of their own, I
hell
would say,
yeah.
yeah, they're responsible.
Well, that's accountability. There's got
Yeah.
to be accountability, and I don't care what part of the government you're in or how big your corporation is. There's got to be accountability, or the problem will continue and it will fester and it will proliferate, and it may even get bigger. And then if they get away with this, just like if you get
Yeah.
away with lying about leaving guys behind in Libya, it can proliferate into something bigger. It's the same thing. If you don't hammer it and you nip it in the bud now, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse because I wish individuals, and I think an individual has integrity. I think when they get in groups, I think, and money starts throwing around, money and figures start going around the room, integrity goes out the window.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, I
so
just, I in every aspect because I do the news on Salem
yeah, yeah,
occasionally. I was doing that this morning and I just saw like, that group United Health, they're going to court over Medicare fraud. And when you hear about like healthcare companies using AI to make decisions about life and death, you go like, what the hell
yeah.
kind of a country that are we living in? And I think the people who work there probably rationalize it to themselves, but as a group, it's just okay, we got to make our shareholders money. And but man, I think it's such an immoral way of thinking. And I mean, this would be a whole nother tangent, but I think that is actually why when you see this guy who's running for mayor in New York City, a lot of young people feel they're being screwed, right? And all their, everybody is out to get their money for everything, healthcare. And it's like, all right, why not elect someone who has a completely different idea of where to go? Now, I don't think that's the way to go, but I do understand how young people are feeling right now. When you hear about stuff like this, man, when everything is about the bottom dollar, I do think people go, man, capitalism is kind of fucked up. And it doesn't have to be that way. I
No.
think there needs to be major changes, though. And then the other thing I was going to say back to the actual issue at hand here is that I was talking about how anti-gun people will talk about suing gun manufacturers when there's a mass shooting or something like that. But another thing is whenever there is a tragedy, you'll hear people on the pro-gun side say, which I would normally agree with, well, I own plenty of guns and I've never seen a gun go off by itself. It's the person behind the gun. And like here is one of these crazy events where it is the gun going off by
Well,
itself, man. And like a lot of people they like going to the range with their young kids and teaching them stuff. And it's like, man, this could be even worse. This could be a child getting shot like this in an environment where people are practicing 100% safety.
well, and when the initial P320 went off and there was a story on it. Actually, I think we even did a talk. It was a while ago. It was like 5 or 6. That was the first one. The blame, it was a law enforcement officer. The blame did go on the law enforcement. That was the first thing. It was your fault. But now that we've had multiple P320s
Yeah.
involuntarily go off, people are like, oh, wait a second. It's not, maybe there is something mechanically wrong with the gun. So, buddy, in this case, I don't think you'll see a lot of pro-gun people, especially even like myself, are going to say, no, it was that person's fault. No, because you don't see guns just go off. They don't. They don't. It doesn't just go off. It's
Yeah.
sitting there. It's not.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, you
sitting.
got a whole room full of
Yeah, I got
guns.
a whole
They're not
room. They
going off.
they don't just go and
Yeah.
it goes off like
Yeah.
Johnny Dangerously or something. It doesn't happen. But when it's the same model and it's the same maker and it just happens to go off, come on, man. And if you're still that zealot, like it's his fault, it's his fault, it's his fault, you can't argue it in this case. There's nothing
Yeah.
to argue. If he was doing quick draws out of his holster and it went off, or he had a Serpa holster which has a little unlocking clip and he kept shoving it back in there and in and out, in and out, in and out. Okay, it's his fault. But it's just sitting there, or it's just in the holster. The thing's not supposed to. It shouldn't be going off. So, and again, this is the same brand, same make. I'm beating a dead horse. And if you're that much of a SIG zealot that you just cannot believe that there's a problem, then maybe you shouldn't be owning guns, guys. You're not. Come on, find your ethics. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And I'm not saying SIG's they're not doing it on purpose, but there's nothing intentional, but there is a problem that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, rest in peace, of course, to this
Yes,
individual. I mean, this is a horrible
definitely.
story.
Terrible.
But the great thing about doing this podcast truly is I mean, being honest, we're not sponsored by SIG. So we're going to give you as accurate of a viewpoint as possible. And there's probably other shows who are either not going to cover this or they're going to cover it incorrectly because they don't want to piss off their
Well,
sponsors.
and
But
maybe
yeah,
next week something will come out. Again, we're giving you the
I kind of
information.
doubt it, but
I
yeah.
doubt it, but we're giving you our opinion based off the information available to us right now. If something comes out next week and it says, yeah, the guy was fingering it and he was jacking around with it, we'll offer a full apology to
Yeah.
SIG because we have ethics on Battle Line podcast. But at this point in time, it doesn't look that way. It looks like there's a mechanical problem with that brand of pistol.
Yep, I fully agree with everything you said, and I also feel like what you said like legally keeps us okay.
I
Like
know.
we're not going to get sued.
There's
So we're not.
that's my
Yeah,
insurance adjusting talk right there. There's my flood insurance adjusting talk right there. I can still talk corporate if I need to. I just don't like to. That's all.
well, I appreciate it. Like I said, we're not sponsored by SIG, but we are sponsored by Fort Scott Munitions. So before we get over to Christopher Brewer, Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with every pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, but you'll get the best deal through us when you go to fsm.com and you use the promo code BattleLine for 15% off your order. Once again, that's fsm.com. Promo code BattleLine for 15% off just about everything on the site. Some stuff you won't get 15% off, but check it out. Only available to listeners of the Battleline podcast. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline podcast. They've been with us since the very beginning. All of that information is in the description. And with that, let's get over to Christopher Brewer. So on with us, Christopher Brewer, for the first time, retired Special Forces officer, Army Ranger with 38 years of combined service, also security contractor, the author of both of these books, Old School Ranger and In the Shadows Between the Wars. As I was saying, actually, right before we hit the record button, I thought it was really cool the fact that you kind of separated these two aspects and these two parts of your career into two different books within a year's time frame. I know you wrote them over the years. But yeah, we'll get into all of it. Thank you so much for sending two hardcover books.
Yeah, I
Really
got mine too.
badass. And
I got mine too, just so
it's
you know. I
it's
got
an
it right
it's an
here.
honor to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
No,
Absolutely.
of course, of course. I always take over from Ian, you get started this time. I always command the microphone whenever we get started, and I
No,
don't
it's
know why.
fine. I mean, I think the easiest thing to start is you being an Army Ranger in the first years of
Yeah,
the first Ranger Battalion is pretty remarkable because when you think about the fact that we've had so many veteran authors on, and sometimes you're
yeah,
like, all right, how many more books do we need sometimes? But then you think, how many guys from the early years of the first
yeah.
Ranger Battalion of books out there? So there's always something unique there. So yeah, probably just your service getting into the Rangers.
Yeah, that's I was going to North Georgia College. It was North Georgia Military College at that time, and we're just down the road from the Mountain Ranger Camp.
Mhm.
So Ranger this, Ranger that, that was pretty much the mantra. And I'd gone to 20th Special Forces National Guard as a private to help pay the bills for college. And I was getting tired of going to school. I'd had a little bit of taste of freedom when I went through basic and AIT, and then I started hearing about the Ranger Battalion cranking up. And this was in 1974.
No, hold on. Listen to Ranger here. He says he gets a taste of freedom going to basic training in AIT and from college. So That's the Ranger mindset right there. I just want to point that out if anybody didn't catch that. I caught it though, brother. Well said. Well said.
Hey, you know how it is. You grow up with a military officer as a dad,
Yeah.
and then you're going to a military school, and man, you get out in basic and AIT, you got money in your pocket and then a weekend off. Oh man, this is what life is like.
That's
So,
hilarious.
so when they cranked up the Ranger Bat, I caught the bug, and I said, well, you know, the heck with school. I got about a year and a half in. I'm going to drop out, and I'm going to go for the real thing. And I wanted to be infantry because, you know, Ranger, Ranger, Ranger. I didn't want to go as a medic. I'd been 91B in the 20th. Went back to Fort Polk, Louisiana, where I did basic for Tigerland to go to 11 Bravo, then picked up jump school en route and reported into the Ranger Battalion in the middle of their activation test because they formed up in June, July at Benning, jumped in to Taylor Creek at Fort Stewart, and then spent that summer getting organized. And then they gave them an activation test to determine if they were ready to go. So I came in as a PFC, no idea what the hell I was getting into. In the middle of the test that was designed to push them as hard as they could go. And the Ranger Battalion at that time, all of the non-commissioned officers in it, and most of the officers in it were veterans of the long range reconnaissance patrols out of Vietnam and SOG and Special
Wow.
Forces. So that was a hard crew,
Yeah. Wow. That's
but
amazing.
probably got the best initial training, leadership training that I could have gotten coming into the military.
Now, this was before they were doing the standard. It's called RASP now, and when I went through it was RIP. But in the beginning, it was before you were getting vetted actually at the unit, right? You weren't there wasn't a RIP at Fort like a separate Ranger indoc at Fort Benning, a 75th indoc, or the Ranger assessment and selection they do now at Fort Benning. Correct? It was basic training and then airborne school, and then you go to the unit, and that's where you're vetted there at First Ranger Battalion if you're going to make it or not. Is that correct? Because I've always been curious because it was different back in the day, and I'm
Mhm.
always been curious how that was how how y'all were vetted within the battalions themselves. Where now it's regimental vetting. You're vetting at the headquarters basically. Um,
Yeah, yeah. RIP and then RASP came about as a result of that first couple of years as we were getting going. Because
got it.
the guys that were the leaders, you know, they had a record. You could look at what they did,
Yeah.
and those were guys that were going to start it. Now, for the privates, we got a record check. There was no enlistment option originally. You had to
That's what I was
be in
going
a,
to ask. Yeah, there was no enlistment option. I got you,
no,
got you. I got you.
yeah. You had to have a record from somewhere and had to be a good record, and then they'd bring you in. And of course, a lot of the guys didn't hang. They left. In fact, in the first 3 years, we went through, I think they said over 3,000 different people of all varying
Wow.
ranks
Right.
that came, and some didn't even make it past the first sergeant's office. They checked in and
Well, why? Give us some stories, man. We like the hazing stories. You can talk about the hazing here. It's a friendly environment. And I think this does prep this sets perspectives for the guys, the young kids that listen to the show that want to go to Ranger Battalion, and
Mhm.
it puts it into perspective of that old adage of back when it was hard. It was harder. It's always harder before, and it is.
Yeah.
It's the God honest truth. But I love to hear those stories of the difficulty, and just it puts in perspective of what maybe that somebody in the future is going to go through when they're making you run at Coal Range and go grab a branch, and you're talking about, well, they used to make our arms bleed and hanging on a pull-up bar till our skin ripped off. Scott, you can run a little bit farther, and so. Yeah, can you get into any of those early stories of you being a private and maybe even having your own doubt where you're just I don't know if I'm not gonna make it. Did you have any of that when you first started, or can and if how'd you get through it?
First chapter in the book.
Yep.
I showed up, dress greens, reported in. Battalion was in the field going through the activation test. And uh, staff duty NCO, there were four of us. Brought us all over to battalion headquarters, took us down to CIF, got our gear issued, told us, all right, take your dress greens off, put them in your duffel bag. This is how you assemble a rucksack in accordance with Ranger Battalion standard. Get into your camis, get into those brand new jungle boots, and get your steel pot on and get in the back of the truck. When the battalion's in the field, everyone goes to the field. And put us in that truck and drove us out. And it was like October. It was cold. It was getting dark. It was raining. And he drove us up toward TAC X, where there's one road. If you've ever been to TAC X, it's swamp on both sides. Stopped in the road, had us all get out, and comes back and looks around and says, "Who's the senior man?" And I was a PFC. The other three were E2s. And he said, "PFC Brewer, here's a map. Here's a compass. You three are assigned to battle company. You're on a 312-degree azimuth at approximately 3,800 meters. Take charge of this patrol and move the fuck out." And he drove off. And it's getting dark. And there's nothing but swamp on both
Yeah.
sides of the road. And 312 degrees is not down that road.
No, no, of course not. Yeah.
So in straight line azimuth, we took off in the swamp and we hit the deep parts and we made it through and we linked up. And the guys had already been out for a couple of days at that point. I mean, they were tired, they were dirty, they
And
were
they're pissed
hungry.
off. Yeah, and they're pissed off. They don't want new guys
What?
coming in. I
Oh,
remember
oh, fuck
that.
yeah.
I remember that, man. Oh yeah.
And we had fun and games with them for a while. And then we had the 25-mile death march back in.
Oh, so you got caught up on the quarterly, or was it just a 25 miler just for shits and giggles? Or was that your quarterly check the box 30 miler we got to do just to Ranger Standard?
That was activation test
That was the
for the
activate. That's
battalion.
what the battalion activation. Gotcha. See that you old school guys did some cool shit. I mean, it's hard, man. I tell you, and I remember reading that. I was looking. I was trying to find the page. It was like right on page 30 and 31 is where he puts in the first sergeant got her fangs in us, and that was I thought that was kind of funny when I
Yeah.
read that. But those guys that quit? Were they part of that march, or were they? When the first sergeant said get on the truck, they're like, we're out, we're done. And what happened to them? Did you know? Did they kick them down the road? They kicked them to, was it Fourth ID that's at Fort Stewart? I don't remember the infantry division, or were they even activated yet?
No, and they kicked us out of the truck. That was, you're going to the swamp. And there was no quit. And in fact, the first guy that quit, who just couldn't take it anymore, uh, he said, "I don't want to do it anymore. I want to leave," and weren't having it. We had a guy that had been an E7 in Vietnam, and he got a battlefield commission. He was the only second lieutenant in the whole battalion. And this guy told him that he was going to quit. And his response to that was to have him elevate his feet in front of the entire platoon on Taylor Creek drop zone while he spoke about him like a dog for probably half an hour, then stood up, ripped off his scroll patch, ripped off his U.S. Army, ripped off his jump wings, because you couldn't quit. So
Yeah.
we were going to jump, and it was going to be a fun jump. So he said, "Well, I terminate jump status. I will not jump. Not on jump status, you're out of the battalion."
Yeah.
And the last thing that the LT did was he told him, "You are not fit to stand in the presence of men, so you will low crawl until you are out of sight." We're halfway down on Taylor Creek drop zone. That's a long time to
Yeah.
low crawl. We were there for a while. And when you get out of sight, you get up and you move back to the battalion. You get all your gear, and
Mhm.
God help you if you're still there when we get back.
Yeah.
And
That's
you had to terminate jump status. That was the only way out.
Man, that's General Patton type stuff right there. And I love General Patton, even though he was a narcissistic ego. The dude was a hell of a commander. If you read, but and I can't even imagine having, the battlefield commission lieutenants from Vietnam, just saltier and harder than nails. That must have been amazing. I'm sorry. I know. Continue on. I wanted to grab a little tidbit because I was reading this. Like I know he's got a cool story in there somewhere that I'm not getting out of the book, and so yeah, appreciate you divulging that. But yeah, continue on as you move. How long did it take till you started to? And I know we're skipping a little bit. We want people to go buy the book and read the book, guys. We're not going to give you the whole book, but
Yeah, both of
but
them.
but yeah, both books. But as you're moving, when did you find that you felt like you were starting to, or was it just like a square peg in a square a square hole, or was there a time where it was like this? I finally feel like I belong. I'm getting it. And mine was when I got my tab and I got back and okay, now I feel like I'm a real ranger. I got my scroll, got my tab. So it was like 2 years after I joined. It took about that long. How was yours, man? And when did you feel like you're just, I'm in it. I'm getting this ranger stuff and I'm starting to love it.
Yeah, to be fully to fully drink the Kool-Aid was probably about 2 years. Uh, First year was just survive, keep
Yeah.
up. I ain't gonna quit. They can't make me quit. Uh, After the first year, I'm 84, and the first sergeant called me out, and I guess I was doing good because he told me, as Specialist Brewer, you're going to go. We were just starting to get schools. He said, you're going to go to the Special Forces Underwater Operations course, and don't fuck up or I'll have your ass. There was no internet back then. So I did what any private would do. First sergeant, what is the Special Forces Underwater Operations course? Shut up. They'll tell you when you get there. No pre-scuba, no idea.
Oh,
I just
wow.
I just reported in, and they weren't going to let me in because I didn't even know what the school was. I could swim, so I had that much going for me. But they took me down to the sergeant major, the SF sergeant major, and he called First Sergeant Martin, trying to explain to him, says, "Hey, he's got to have
For
pre-scuba. It's a
school, yeah.
tough course. He ain't going to make it." And I could hear Martin on the other end of the line, just, and that sergeant major sits there and he pulls the phone back and he's looking at it and he's going, "Sergeant Major or First Sergeant, you do know I'm a Sergeant Major, right?" He hung up and said, "Good luck, kid. I'll probably see you in about a week. You're going to scuba school."
I would
Wow.
imagine it was a completely different experience for you than some of the younger guys we've had on the show. And when I say younger guys, like I don't even mean this era. I also mean guys in their 40s, 50s, because of the fact that, yeah, guys your age, because, there were books out there about guys from your era and later. Now there's podcasts, people could listen to our show and hear Curtis Albers talk all about Cole Range. I would imagine for you, you were stepping into the complete unknown.
All of us were really, because in that first 3 years, nobody really knew what a Ranger Battalion could do. So they looked back through what they'd done in World War II and what Rogers Rangers had done, 5 miles in 1 hour. Apparently, somebody had had to road march 5 miles in an hour to an objective and fight when they got there. So we kitted up and we did that. 25-mile road marches, and they just kept looking for things that we could do to see how far you could go before you couldn't go any further. We had one RTEP quarterly test, not RTEP or quarterly, I don't remember, not too many memories from that one, that we basically went to Fort Bragg, we jumped in, and we walked for 3 days and 3 nights. And the only time that we stopped was to dig a fighting position. And as soon as the fighting position was done and camouflaged to standard, we had to fill it in,
Good.
put the ruck on, and start walking again. And there was no sleep, for no rest for 3 days, 3 nights. And on the fourth night, we did a live fire on an objective. And the only thing I can remember about that live fire was crawling and firing my weapon. That's the only memory I have of it. But we went to Panama, JOTC,
Yeah.
and they all told us you don't move at night in the jungle. And our guys, oh, hell with that. We're Rangers. We move at night. We move any damn time we want to. And 90 millimeter recoilless rifles, mortars, everything we had at night patrols through the jungle. And there's a chapter in there on terror in the jungle. Uh, we went to the Arctic Northern Warfare course in February, and it wasn't Fairbanks wasn't hard enough. So we jumped in on the North Slope on the other side of the mountains in February, and then moved down to the Alaska pipeline to simulate Russian forces trying to attack it. And then the local Alaskan troops had to interdict us. And we all damn near died on that one. So we got through that first couple of years, and then they made it an enlistment option. And we started getting both officers and sergeants and soldiers coming in that were nowhere near ready to come into the battalion. And we got over like 20% over strength. And I remember the sergeant major had a formation and told us that I want all NCOs and officers to go ahead and be released. You're gone. I only want E4 and below. And we're all standing there. And he says, all right, I'm talking to you E4s. We're 20% over strength. We don't have any room in the barracks. This was Friday. By Monday morning, I expect us to be at or below authorized strength. And I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. There will be no NCO supervision this weekend. And it was just hell to pay. There were people being held upside down out the barracks from the second floor, screaming. And we still had the only way out was terminate jump status. So only the strong survived, or you got in there and said, you're either leaving or you're dying because we ain't putting up with your shit anymore. We're not carrying you any further.
The battle royal. I was thought you were gonna everybody grab a K bar and I'll see you on Monday. It is battle royale, but essentially that's what it sounds like it turned out to be. Is just who's gonna who's gonna win this fight and be here on Monday. And for those out there that listen and they're like, man, that's sadistic. It's really not, guys. You you have to be able to, and I'm sure even with you guys being activated, and this is before, really getting into, you guys are prepping to get into some conflicts here, and Rangers are setting the standard, is that you do have to have the best of the best and mentally the best of the best, be able to handle. And it's like it does take that sort of mentality of anything to survive. Now, just to let everybody know, nobody died, correct? Because we'll have somebody listen and wonder, and we'll get a comment that somebody did. But did anybody? Nobody died, right? During that
Nobody actually died
died.
in our first 3 years, except for Sergeant Major Cairo.
Oh,
And
I'm talking
Jim.
about the weekend brawl to get things.
No,
Okay, good. I just
no.
check. I just want to make sure all our listeners out, because it's a kinder, gentler world nowadays, Chris. You know that, Ranger. Yeah.
Well,
So
there may have been a few people who stumbled down the stairs two or three times,
that
but
happens.
it happens, you
That
know.
happens every once in a while. Um, Moving on and continuing on, you guys are activated now. Did the missions start coming in again? The book and give a little bit of it if you can. I don't want to go through every story because I want people to read it because it's especially if you're going to be a new Ranger, guys. Read this before you're going to join. If you're thinking about it, I would highly recommend you do that. But yeah, how did the tempo start when you finally like, hey, we're activated. We're at strength. What started to happen? You started to do all your more training missions. Were you looking at getting alerted more? Just talk to me, man. What went on?
Well, they put us on alert status. We'd already had a few guys through Halo, a few guys through Scuba. Then we started to go on our world tour. They sent us to Reforger, worked up against the 101st. They sent us to JOTC in Panama, to White Sands, New Mexico for desert. We went up to the North Slope of Fort Richardson. No,
Yeah,
Fort Wainwright
in
for the
Alaska.
Northern Warfare in Alaska.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our circuit there for a while. The closest we came to an actual deployment was when the Mayaguez incident kicked off. And they were going to put us in on Mayaguez, but we had a brand new battalion commander. Lure had left, and Stang had came in. And Stang was brand new, and he wasn't convinced that we were ready for that kind of deployment. And he didn't like the way the mission had been put together either. It didn't sound good to him. So he passed on that, and he told us later he regretted passing. He said he should have put us in. But we didn't deploy to any actual combat operations
Yeah.
because this I was a tweener. We were
Yeah.
after Vietnam and before the wars. You get into a little more conflict in the second book
Yeah,
by
yeah.
that
I
by
was going to get
late
into that.
80s.
Sure.
Yeah. But that was pretty much our life is just fleshing out the battalion and starting to figure out what we were going to be and what we were going to grow into. There was a second battalion formed up. They took out the XO. He went over to start up second battalion. Third
Got
battalion
it.
hadn't
Yeah.
come into existence. Regiment didn't exist yet. So we were still forming and growing about that period of time.
Well, that's a good transition into the second book, which I mean is appropriately titled In the Shadows Between the Wars. And if you read this book, like pretty early on, you talk about 9/11 and your long military career long before 9/11 have ever happened, because once again, you're a guy with a combined nearly 4 decades of service. So, yeah, what was the transition into special forces and once again in between the wars?
The let me back up a little bit because the
Sure.
34 years of service, probably about half of that was as a civilian contractor. So I had
Yeah.
24 years of active duty, just to clarify. But both books, when I was writing these, the intent was to leave a record of what it was like in those days and those years going through. but I break it down into detail to explain for folks who've never been in the military, don't know anything about the military, because I think that's something that we're really missing. So for folks that are thinking about coming in, the Ranger book, uh, coming into battalion, what it's like in daily life back in those days, but that's going to be true of any
Yeah.
good, well-led infantry unit. And there's also some chapters in there about going through Ranger School, what's expected,
Yeah.
what I had to do to succeed. And there's a chapter in there where I was a Ranger instructor. So you look at it from the other side. So if you're going to go to Ranger School, I'd recommend you take a look at that. There's a lot of good tips in there that'll help you through. But on the second book, same idea, but there were stories in there for missions in particular that had been top secret, special compartmented information. And it was, you never talk about this, take it to your grave. You weren't there, it didn't happen, yada, yada, yada.
And
And
that's
then
the
I
thing,
was,
like you guys from your era writing these books are really the historians because
Yeah.
if you don't have out these books, there is no record of some of the stuff you're writing in here.
and that's what prompted me to do it because I went down to visit my old A team, ODA, from 7th Group. And they were really enthusiastic. They invited me to come down because when they moved from Fort Bragg to Florida, everything disappeared out of the team room. All the plaques, the photos, the mementos, everything was gone
Wow.
because it went to somebody's man cave in their garage.
Wow.
And, and they had no idea what the team had done before. So they were trying to build back the team history. So I took down some of the stuff I had, gave it to them. I still have my old dive knife, an old rusty K-bar. I
Wow.
gave that to them. They kept it in the team room. But then I thought, and I had some of I wrote some stories for them that were TSSCI missions, but that I can give it to them because it's a secure environment. They've got clearances. It's their story. And noticed on Facebook, there's all these guys from SOG and the LERP teams and Project Phoenix, all those take it to your grave. And they got their own Facebook page where they're swapping stories. And I talked to some of them and they said, after 30, 40 years, no one gives a damn.
Nobody's gonna come after you. They're not gonna come after you,
But
grab you.
but just in case, type it all up, double wrap it, send it off to DoD
Yeah.
pre-publication review. And that's what it did. And the funny thing was, I chose, there's some stories I know I have no business talking about because they're still going on now in current events. So I didn't touch that. And there were some that I thought, well, they're not going to let me talk about this, but I want to see what they're going to say. So I put those in, I sent it up. They sent it to PACOM, SOUTHCOM, SOCOM, uh, State Department, a couple of other groups of people out there. And for 6 months, they argued about it. And then it came back, and the guy says, hey, look, it came back, but they disagree with one another on what's classified and what's not. So we're going to have to send it back again with their comments. And it finally came back with, all right, fine, you can talk about it. We don't care, but don't you dare use this one acronym. Use this one. Well, no, I've never heard of that. What is it? It's one we made up.
It's so
Use
funny
it.
too because like I was just gonna say when I read Rob O'Neill's book, for example, like SEAL Team 6, just the name SEAL Team 6 is redacted. And it's like we all know what he's
Well,
talking about. It's kind of silly the stuff they redact.
Yeah, so I could say the emergency response force, but I could not say what it actually
Well,
was.
yeah, it's like
you
don't
can
say
say
it
the
here. I don't want
B.
to
You
get
can
you
say the B.
sued.
Isn't it? It's silly going through the process of getting your I forget what it was called. I did do it on 13 hours. We had to do it, and it's the process. It's we like the silliness of we couldn't put our names on the cover of the book. But you can put our names inside. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's small victories. It's like we'll give you this, but you got to give us this, and it doesn't make any sense. But you know what? Fine, if that's what gets it through. And I know I remember. I mean, I read the at the beginning of this too. You put that in there. Like, hey, there's some stuff in here I couldn't talk, but we did get it cleared. Just so you know. So
Yeah, I
Yep.
saw the
they don't
clearance
come.
date on
Yeah,
there.
so they don't come because they will. They came back on No Easy Day on
Yeah, Mark Owen,
Mark's
aka
book
Matt Bissonette. I mean,
on
everybody knows me.
Bissonnette's book, and there's nothing classified in that book. I thought it was a great book. Matt's a great guy too. But yeah, when you finally got it cleared that year, and now the public was the publisher because pushing you, or were they helping you at all to get that through, or were you just being patient because you're a patient guy and just say, well, it'll get through or it won't. And then if it didn't, what were you going to do? Or were you going to continue to write it and just say to hell with it and take your chances? Or
No, I didn't have a publisher. I wrote it
you
first.
wrote it, you could self-published. Yeah, you self-published.
Yeah, and then I found a publisher, the self-published thing,
Got it.
and uh, added a few things I know are not classified to add a few couple of more pages in there, 509th and stuff like that. But that one is intended to show the way into Spec Ops because there's a mind, you know this, there's a mind process.
Yep.
Do I really want to do this? Why do I want to do this? What got me into doing this? There's a chapter in there on the qualification course, which did have the first experimental selection and assessment incorporated into phase one that we got to experience while they were trying out selection and assessment for the Q course. And they added in SEER school as part of it, just for a little bit extra. The guy came in, the colonel came in to brief us, said, hey, you will not have the course that I had for special forces. This is not a gentleman course anymore. Yours is going to be harder. It's going to be a lot harder. And we're going to see what works and what doesn't work. But if you get recycled, you're going to go through whatever we decide it's going to look like on the back end. And it might be a little less hard than what you're going to go through. But I recommend that you hang in there. So we had that. Uh, and I got into seventh group and I had first group, and you have some good stories from there.
The how was the SEER school experience for you? I know it's a dumb question, but to me, what was the hardest part? What was there a time again? I always like to hear, was there a time where you're just like, I can't do this and you press through it? Or did you just put your mind on or just sensory numbness and just every day just get through it? Every day walk lower than Mama San. So if she smacks me, she smacks me every day.
Yeah.
How was your mindset trying to get through that?
The well, I've actually been through three SEER programs because when I went to Ranger School back in the 70s, they had a SEER program in
That's
Rangers.
right. Yep, I heard about that.
And that one was pretty rough, but it was you just getting the snot beat out of you all the time. And there was a little bit of mind thing going on, but the one they had at Bragg, that's a lot more cerebral. They've really thought about what's going to scare you, what's going to get to you, and
And that's the one that's modeled after the one they do. I mean, if the one that's closest to what they do today is that model, correct?
mhm. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
But there are things that there's one thing in particular that did get to me, um, and without talking too much about it, they find ways to hit you at an emotional level. You know, what are you missing? What are you worried about? What are you concerned? Your family, your kids, and they found a soft spot. And I hit that breakdown point, but I was locked up in that little tiger cage,
Wow.
and no one was coming to check on me, so I had time to get over it and get my head back in the game by the time they drugged me out to go to hard cell.
Do you think they do that I mean, they're so talented. Really, the instructors are because they're pushing to a level where it would. I look at sadistic, but do you think they that's the point where they're going to be able to tell where they're pushing a button and they know where you can recover, even though it's physically hard to recover because you're about this big, but you're going to be there by yourself, mentally leaving you alone? Or do you think that's just was a coincidence? I honestly think they do that on purpose. They know, like, okay, we got him. Let's go put him in the box. It's going to suck for him physically, but we're not messing with his head. He's going to get himself back together, or he's going to quit, but he's not going to keep going down where eventually he's self-harm. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
I don't, I didn't get the feeling that there was that much of he's cracking, give him a break. The the closest I came to anything individual was they pulled me out at one point and they put me in a very close confined place that if you were claustrophobic would be a problem. Now, in my case, that was the first time I'd been warm in a week. And I actually fell asleep there because I couldn't fall down. And I was happy. The only bad thing about that box was when they pulled me out of it. So, and I think that was just, all right, try this. That ain't working. Try this. Try this. Now we're getting a reaction. Punch that button again and see what goes on.
Put an asterisk. This is what we're gonna do for the future. Right here. Here's the triple asterisk right there.
Yeah.
Um, That that's amazing. I saw, some of the little stories, and if you can get into it, the Columbia stories, and I always, to me, those are still interesting. The drug and the stories about Colombia and Panama and so forth. Can you give us just some experience and how that continued to shape your career and how the war on drugs and dealing with Noriega and dealing with Escobar? And when you got to there, that's to me, that's the super secret cool guy stories and books are made of time. But how was that? Because that's later in your career. That's when you're really starting to get salty. Um, yeah, experience. Just how were you feeling? Give me a day that you were there, and what went through your head, and did you feel like hey, I've made it. I'm a cool guy now. I'm an operator, and I've got to continue to push myself to different levels. And how do you do that when you reach to those levels too? When you're reaching those secret cool guy levels that you did reach?
Uh, I don't know if it was much in my head that I figured I'd got there, but when I came in to take over the team, we'd just become a branch. SF was a new branch.
Gotcha.
And at that time, their attitude was if you have 6 months on a team as an officer, you're branch qualified and you move on. And they'll never come back to an A team again. So the team that I took over had one guy that had been with them for 6 months. They deployed, and at that time, all the missions were 6-month missions.
Okay.
And this guy came in after they deployed, so he went to Halo or scuba school, and he was still there when they got back and they deployed again. So he never even met the team. So he had 6 months, had never met the men on his team, let alone been on an A team. Branch qualified out, and you're moving to staff. So when I came in, they told me flat out, yeah, yeah, Cap, you sit over here, pay attention, take notes, and maybe you'll learn something before you disappear, but don't get a big head about anything. So, all right, okay. Well, I'm along for the ride here. Let's see how it goes. But when we got the mission to Colombia, uh, Galan had been assassinated. They wanted a medical corpsman school, but medical corpsmen would not have survived with what was going on in Bogota because there were attacks going down every night.
Wow.
So they took 6 of us and they reassigned us to Security Assistance Training Management Office. So you're not Green Berets anymore. You're now medical logisticians over here with SATMO. And we put on civilian clothes and flew commercial into Bogota. And we had some sterile camis and a radio in our aid bag, but we didn't have any guns. They gave us a Beretta when we got there. They drove us down to the Escuela Logísticas in San Cristobal, right in the middle where shit was going on. Dropped us off, and they said, check in with us at least once a week so we know you're alive. We'll come get you in 6 months, but we ain't coming back down here again. And left us. So took a little while, but we figured out after a bit, that the guys are running out of Copenhagen. They weren't going to stay down there 6 months without going back
That's
to the
true.
embassy to get the
That's
aid
true.
package.
That's true.
So we figured out how to get out of there and make our way through the barrio and make our way up to the embassy and sit outside the embassy, put eyes on to see if it was going to get attacked or blown up that day before we tried to get in through the gate, go in and get the care package of Copenhagen and Tabasco sauce, cash a check, go back out in our blue jeans and our black leather jacket with our Beretta tucked up under it and make our way back through the city, back down to San Cristobal. And at that time, we were the only Americans moving around the city that weren't DEA or other spooks. So the embassy, they loved us when we came in once a month. We get a debrief every time. What the hell's going on out there? And we let them because no one, even DEA, went down to South Bogota. But that was a little bit, and after still had some challenges with the team because there was some stuff we had to do to keep the guys alive. And you know how the guys are, they get a little froggy. I know what I'm doing, this, that, and the other. Had one guy that actually got his ass kicked and his Beretta taken away.
Oh shit.
And if his buddy hadn't been close, he'd have been dead. But that kind of toned it down a little because Team Sergeant brought him in and said, okay, it's up to the team leader if you even have a career, we ship you back. So we had a heart to heart and then started to actually become a team leader. And then we had the Escobar mission. And That was a classic. That's in the book. But long
Yeah.
story short,
Yep.
there were some super secret guys that needed help down in the valley between Bogota and Medellin. Read Tom Clancy, Clear and Present Danger. Couldn't get anybody in to help. President wouldn't let anybody come. Cumberlands wouldn't let anybody come. So they asked us, can you do something? So two of us took our Berettas and our sterile camis and flew down there and check it out and met Mr. Escobar's guys, and we sorted things out. So they decided it was probably not a good idea to do what they were threatening to do. And then we made our way back up to Bogota. And by the end of that, the guys were, okay, yeah, Cap is at some value added to the team here. Yeah. But then
I didn't
after,
want. Oh, keep going. I'm sorry. I'm cut.
no, but after that, we went to Panama. And then I had a whole new team. And by that time, I had my street creds.
You,
So,
I didn't
you,
want to. I was jumping in on that. I didn't want to interrupt what you're saying because you were going on a while there, and it was all great stuff. So when you said Copenhagen and Tabasco sauce, I remember hearing from operators. So I'm just wondering if this is what it is. I don't remember where I heard this, so maybe I'm way off. But of like guys using Tabasco sauce as eye drops. Is that what you're referring to, or no?
that's Ranger School. That's Ranger
yeah.
School to stay awake. That's just to flavor. People think Colombia, they think Mexican food. In my opinion, Colombian food was very bland.
Yeah.
Extreme. It's not Mexican spicy, and that. So
That's
I
true.
go ahead, yeah, go ahead. Because is that where? Because that's. I mean, the Copenhagen, I get, man. Fuck yeah, Copenhagen. We need Copenhagen. Need to have my dip today or when I wake up. But yeah, go into that because some of the civilians they don't under. I don't think they understand that it's sometimes we risk our lives for the what we would think would be the most mundane dumb things, but in essence, that's what keeps us going when we're away from home. So maybe elaborate on that a little bit, because I mean, honestly, Ian, that's a great question.
Well,
On
eating Colombian rations in the Colombian dining facility, there's a lot of rice. It's pretty much the same
Yeah.
thing every day, except for Sunday. We had this courtyard. It was always full of pigeons. And we noticed that on Sunday, we'd have these two little chicken breasts. And for some reason, there were no pigeons out in the yard. Never could understand that. But that was what the hot sauce was for, just to
Okay.
make stuff edible. Now, the Copenhagen, our last month down there before we came home, uh, there was more stuff going on. The National Police headquarters got blown up. That's when that big bomb went off. There was a lot of stuff going down. The invasion in Panama happened while we were down there.
oh wow,
So stuff got really tense. And we couldn't make the normal run up to the embassy. But senior medic came over and sat down. He's the same guy who went with me on that mission out into the valley. And he sat down, and I see the guys all talking, and they're real serious. And I knew something was going on. Hopefully, they're not plotting against me, but we'll find out. Finally, JR comes over and he sits down and says, Cap, I got to talk to you. And I said, okay, here it comes. What's up, JR? He says, well, we're down to one can of Copenhagen. That's all we got left amongst the four of us. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to hold this can of Copenhagen and I want you to guard it with your life. You bring it out in the morning, right after breakfast. You hold it in your hand. You don't let anybody else hold it. And everybody gets one grab, only two fingers, no rooting around it. They take it out, and we figured that'll get that can to last us for 2 weeks till we can get the next care package. And Cap,
Jeez.
just so you don't get a big head, the only reason we're asking you to hold the can is because we know you don't dip, and we don't trust one another to pass it off to anyone else.
That is a wild story. That's like the miracle of Hanukkah with the oil
yeah,
lasting 8 nights or something. But you know what I wanted to ask you? I mean, this might be a weird question, but it's because of guys I've interviewed that I've heard this from, guys who have a similar background to you, although, definitely different eras. Do you think of yourself more as an Army Ranger or a Special Forces vet, Green Beret? Because Jack Murphy, for example, we had on the show, walked that same path of Army Ranger and Green Beret, but he'll tell you he identifies way more as an Army Ranger. For you, is there something you identify more as?
Oh, I became a Green Beret, but I was still a Ranger. I had to temper that to survive in that world and be effective in that world. But the tools Ranger Battalion gave me is what made me effective in Special Forces because I knew tactics and I knew what hard times and I knew all the rest of that. I just had to learn how to get people that were secretly plotting to kill you to do what you needed them to do without letting them actually kill you. And you're not allowed to kill them. That was the hard part.
You have
That
to learn,
reminds me, I'm
you have to
sorry,
learn a little
that
tact, a little tact. You got
I was
to
gonna say though,
A
that
little
reminds
bit.
me of that General Mattis quote, and I'm probably not getting it 100% accurate, where he was like, "Be kind, be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill every
kill every,
person that you meet."
Everyone in the room.
Yeah.
everyone there. That is the one thing you do have to learn tact. I, I think every ranger would say the same thing, whether it was from your era and moving all the way on till now, and moving on to whether it's SF or going to the agency or anything. It's you learn all the tactics. You learn how to 100% and then some. You learn the lone survivor, being able to fight through and persevere. But it's the tact that Rangers learn after how to deal with people after they get out. When you're saying that it's so cool because I'm hearing it from your generation, and it was even then. So to me, that says Rangers are still doing what Rangers need to do, and that's go destroy everything that they need to and blow everything up and win the fight, and then you got to kind of change your way of not thinking, just your the way how you deal with people once you leave, and it hasn't changed a bit. So to me, that means the Ranger lineage is freaking awesome. It's incredible because
Yeah, it hadn't changed. That there was an old battalion or a regimental commander. I forget. I saw him on YouTube talking about what people don't realize about the Rangers, and it really struck me as being pretty profound. But he said what people don't understand when you're in the Ranger Regiment is the missions that your government is going to send you on are really suicide missions. They No one else can do it. It's got to get done, and they fully understand none of you may come back, but we're going to put you in because you're the best we've got, and it's got to happen. And something else that people don't understand is that Ranger Creed. And when I was in Afghanistan as a security contractor, I'd see the boys getting kitted up and getting ready to go out on operations at night. And they all get in a circle. They all put their arms around one another in that circle, and they recite the Ranger Creed. And that's not just words on a page. Everything in there the guys live by, and it gets hammered into you, right down to the never shall I leave a fallen comrade to
yeah,
fall into the hands of the enemy. And you remember Haditha Dam in Iraq,
yep,
where there's one guy that was left behind. And after they got pushed off, they got reorganized and commandeered some armor and went back
went
in
back, yeah,
and got him. And the first words out of his mouth were, I knew you would come back. And that's why the guys go out, because they know you're not going to get left behind.
you're
They're
not
going
gonna
to
get
come after you.
not,
There's another thing an old regimental sergeant major said at a formation I heard one time that struck home is that when Delta gets in trouble, they call Rangers. When the SEALs get in trouble, they call the Rangers. When Rangers get in trouble, they call more
They
Rangers.
call more range. I've heard that before too. It's it's so true. Well, we always were the I mean, always were the QRF. Always QRF for blocking forces, protecting the smaller missions that are going on if they're going to snatching. Well, Somalia is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Black Hawk Down and Gothic Serpent. But I even think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ian. I know I haven't talked to Marcus in years, but I even think when he heard the Spectre going out and he heard, the firing going on, he knew it was the Rangers coming and he knew it was safe. Now, I don't put words in Marcus's mouth, but I could have swore I heard that from somewhere. It could have been from Marcus at some point in time over the years, but and that's not a knock on him, but that's one thing you always in Afghanistan or Iraq, if you're that Spectre gunship's going and you're hearing a firefight, Rangers are coming to get us. We're going to be okay. I mean, keep your
Yeah.
head down because there's going to be a lot of fire. Just get out of grazing fire. Just stay down and wait for him to come help you. And it's one because that's the lineage that's still preached even when I went through RIP. That was
Hmm.
hammered, and I was lucky to have Sergeant Jeff Strucker as one of my RIP techs when I was going through as one of the instructors. So and he he was a god because he's the Somali guy, and we're all it was 95, so it's all peacetime. I'm a peacetime ranger going through RIP and seeing a guy with a scroll and being like, holy shit, that dude's Somali. And he didn't have to say a word. All he had to do was come and stand on the porch and look at us, and we would shit our pants, and then he'd walk back inside. Like, okay, we're safe. But no, I loved and I don't the books, and that's why I really did reading this one especially. I would highly recommend if guys are thinking about joining. I don't care if it's it's not, it's different years. This will prep you. This really will. And the Ranger School stories. I did want to ask one last thing. When you went through Desert Phase, we don't do Desert Phase anymore. Do you? I just want. I honestly regret that. I wish my Ranger School when I went through, we didn't have desert. I would have loved to have gone through Dugway or for down at Bliss. But I always love to hear the desert stories, just because I didn't get to go through when they didn't have that phase when I went through Ranger School, and they still don't have it. But what what was the hardest? Well, what was the hardest part about desert phase, and also what was to me your hardest? What was to your hardest phase that you went through? Where you're just mine was mountains, but like I said, I didn't have desert. But what was? I just want to get a picture of desert phase. That's because I really wish I could have gone through it, man, because it's something I
Well,
regret.
well, when I went through Ranger School, we didn't have desert phase. The chapter in the book on the desert is a
That was
battalion.
the battalion desert training. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. But and that was at White Sands, and Dugway is a different place. Now, I've been up there training in SF around Dugway. And what
Gotcha.
you may not know is that area used to be where they dropped chemical munitions. They dropped, there's radioactive out there. Some of the places they warn you don't walk out across this because if you break through the crust, there could be radiation, there could be chemical agents down there. It's a lovely place up around Dugway. And it gets a lot colder. Now in White Sands at night, and daytime it'd be 120, 130 degrees, blistering hot. But at night, if you didn't put your canteens underneath you, they'd freeze. And then you wouldn't have any water until the sun got up enough to go ahead and drink water. And everything down in White Sands has either got thorns, fangs, or poison, or all three. So you don't want to take a knee because you're going to be digging something out of your knee every time you do, but you got to take a knee. You got to get on the ground. So the desert was not my most favorite place, but the hardest one for me in Ranger School, the sear was that one was rough. I won't question that,
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Florida for me was probably the hardest one because by that time I had enough graded patrols that I was a go as long as I didn't mess up. So I wound up being the platoon sergeant for the whole week down in Florida patrols. All right, now Ranger Smith, you're the new patrol leader. Ranger Brewer, you're still the platoon sergeant. Ranger Anderson, you're the new patrol leader. Brewer, you're the platoon sergeant. But I came out of there as an E5, so I
Well,
knew what to do.
when and they're putting you in that position because they're basically saying with an unspoken rule, we need you there to help these other guys get their goes, and that's a to me that's a badge of honor. I mean, they're putting you in those positions. Now it's not platoon sergeant because that's one of the graded positions. If you've got your go, they'll put you as RTO, and so you get the blessing of being RTO the whole time and carrying the radio, and it's not the
Yeah.
little radio. It's still the old the old one night. What's the old ones? The old big
Se-
ones.
74 Bravo, the HF
70,
radio.
it's just the huge ones. Yeah. And but yeah, and that's it. Sorry, confused. I thought it was Ranger School in the desert part because I was looking at, and I do love the pictures. The
Mhm.
pictures, I'm a simple guy. I love seeing the great old school pictures, but the desert part always training always got me because I just something that I wish I would have done more of. I've done a lot of stuff, but I always thought that was interesting to me being out there. And I did do roving sands once with second battalion. out there in White Sands, but it was nothing like you. I mean, you guys just trained your asses off. Not saying Rangers don't. It just seems to, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I see hold you guys in awe more than anything and put you
Yeah.
up on a pedestal.
And we learned a lot too, because the 101st was out there too. They were looking for us. So, you know, how it is when you go from Donna Base Camp and they had us walk all the way across that valley toward the mountains on the other side. And we walked for like 3, 4 days trying to get to those mountains. But 101st would come whooping through and you'd hear that whoop, whoop, whoop in the distance. And everybody's 50 to 100 meters between each man, just kneel down and don't move. And you look like a sagebrush to the helicopter. And they'd
Wow.
go right on by and not see us.
That's
The
cool.
last thing I wanted to ask you about, outside of the books, outside of your service, is that I know you have some involvement with Three Rangers Foundation, who we're very familiar with. I mean, we've had Dale Sizemore on the
Dale,
show.
yeah,
Good
Dale's a
guy,
friend.
bit of a wild man, but good dude. From my experience meeting him. So
Dale's
yeah,
a good
what's
buddy.
what's
Dale's a
your
friend. Good
what's
guy.
your involvement in Three Rangers?
Uh, I met Mike Hall at one of the functions and he invited me over. That the only thing that I'm doing over there is I'm just on the mentor list
Sure.
since I did so much time overseas, security contracting. And when Mike gets a guy that's coming out that wants to get into that world and ask some questions, he'll shoot me an email and I'm just available to talk to him, link him up with contacts. I've still got a few contacts that are active out there in that world and try to help the guys and mainly let them know, this is what it really is. It's not what you see on the movies. And here's the pitfalls and here's the things you got to watch out for and be careful and maybe hook them up with somebody reliable. Give them a shot.
Who
Yeah,
are you?
excellent.
I'm sorry, and go ahead. I apologize, but
No, I was going to wrap things up because you said you had your last
oh, I
question, but
actually, I just, who are you contracting with? If you don't mind me asking, or how many? I'm sure you did multiple contracts with probably multiple companies, but
Oh,
who are
yeah.
you working with?
Uh, Started out with a company called Cytex that later was bought out by Lockheed Martin.
Okay,
I was a threat options analyst for Army Materiel Command and building target folders if I was going to mess you up. And then 9/11 happened. And then I started a new contract for 2 years where I was running red teams. When we were going out, we were putting surveillance on all those same
yeah,
facilities and teaching the guys inside how to respond. We actually helped bag an Al Qaeda operative at the tank plant that's up in Milan, Ohio, I think it is, because we were going out to put eyes on the gate when Rush was coming in. And there was a guy already there in a rental car, military age, male, dark complexion with a video camera. And we always had link ups with the local police and with an FBI handler. So if we got into trouble, we'd call them because we'd have cops with guns
sure.
pointing in our face and shaking, not knowing who we were. So these are the guys that keep us from getting killed. We called them. They rolled him up and found out he was an Al Qaeda
Wow.
actual operator that had disappeared from Michigan when they were tracking him. And he was down there. He was surveilling the site. From there, I was the head of KBR security after Afghanistan, helped them build all the fire bases, went around with all the ODAs when they were getting ready to put in their base. And they say, well, we need HESCOs and we need this. And okay, yeah, cool guy. But you do know we're in a minefield, right? Maybe we get the EOD out here first. And then did that for about 4 years, 4 or 5 years. I was in and out of Afghanistan. I came back. I was working for Worldwide Language.
Okay.
I was force protection advisor to DCG for support. Went back to the same fire bases. Worked for MPRI. Helped start out the Afghan Special Forces course. Was teaching them down there at Rishkavor. And then I went down to the UAE and was working with the Presidential Guard down there for 4 years.
Awesome. Well, look, there's a lot of history there.
Wow.
That's why it couldn't be contained in one book. So, guys, pick up both of these books for sure. Once again, Old School Ranger and In the Shadows Between the Wars. I don't think you have anything else you're promoting, right? You're not on any social media or any of that. Anything else that you want to get out there?
No, we'll see what this new publisher comes up with. They say they're going to set up a website and do all kinds of fancy things. So we'll see how that
We'll
develops.
see. And I don't, man, I think you look better with a beard, dude. I'm not saying you're not
I've
look good now, but
I've heard that.
I kind of like that beard, man. But now it's excellent stuff, and it's an honor, man. Seriously,
Thank you.
to have you on, and because you're the guys I looked up to that made me want to join, and I still look up to y'all immensely. So you're old school guy, you're OG, Chris. So I appreciate you coming on the show and just letting me fanboy a little bit. Thanks, man.
Oh, I appreciate you guys letting me come on and ramble on for a while. I enjoy it.
Oh, it's excellent. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Chris.
That's all for this episode of Battle Line Podcast. But we're always posting new content on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Battle Line Podcast and on Twitter at Battle Line Pod. That's an order. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes up every Tuesday. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Believe in yourself. Face all challenges head on. And as always, never quit.